Welcome back everyone to day 2 of self-compassion, self-care and compassion for others. So yesterday we finished on talking about, when we talked yesterday about what compassion was, what it means to us, and some of the things that, some examples Lisa gave us around what it meant to her, and we talked about it not being pink and fluffy. So I suppose today it's important to talk about some of the barriers to self-compassion and the impact of not practicing self-compassion, and when you are unable to be compassionate towards yourself and forgiving towards yourself and even vulnerable, it's more difficult to be compassionate with other people. So I think that's the piece that we're at really today. And in these current circumstances where there is a lot of uncertainty, I suppose the message is for us that you just can't turn on a compassion switch. Can't expect people who are not normally compassionate to be compassionate with other people. And if people are unable to be compassionate and kind to themselves in times of difficulty, it's more difficult for them to share that with other people. And we're having a few experiences too where in these most stressful times, and especially at work, people are getting it more difficult to be kind to themselves, because there's a flurry of activity and a lot of anxiety and worry about how we're proceeding and what way things look. And while we're talking about compassion and kindness and being respectful in relationships, it can be very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to turn that on when there is a lot of stress and expectation as well.
And I think what happens as well when we can't practice it with ourselves, that it spills over onto other people. That certainly happened in my family, and I consider myself to have quite a high level of self-awareness and insight. And that's where it's particularly important to be able to look at ourselves. We're all responding to stress. We spoke about that, the fight, flight, freeze. We all respond and react in different ways. But the self-awareness piece is so important for looking at that and saying, well, what can I do when I have messed up, or I maybe feel I haven't done the right thing, or I haven't acted in the way I would like to have acted? What is it that I can do about that? And I think it's also really helpful for people to think about, most of us struggle with the whole idea of self-compassion, self-care, being kind to ourselves. And that's for multiple reasons. Many of us can grow up with messages from our families, from the culture that we live in, that it's not okay, it's selfish, that some of those messages, you don't deserve it, you're not worthy. You know, all those kind of things impact on our ability to, and can be barriers to practicing that with ourselves.
And I think in times like this, as I have said, when there is more pressure and stress, both at home, in work and within families, and relationships can be strained. You talk about the flight, fight or freeze reaction, Lisa. We can feel very emotionally charged in these environments now, and can start to feel anxious, uptight, stressed, overreactive instead of responsive, and then say things and do things that we regret and that we wish we hadn't. And it's very difficult then to be forgiving of yourself. And if you're not the kind of person that is very forgiving towards yourself, it's harder then to be more forgiving of other people who might present with tensions and stresses of their own, and your automatic response might be to react. And this is happening day and daily to most of us. Your automatic response might be to react. But if you have a fairly well developed sense of self-awareness and know what really makes you tick, you're more likely to pull back and say, right, do I really need to react like this? Can I respond differently?
And it's using those wellness tools. What can I do? It's using the wellness tools to in fact manage that stress, take care of ourselves so we can respond differently. And I think there was something really important in what you said there in terms of our responses to these situations. And very often when we're up, our backs are up against a wall and we're feeling threatened, a very normal response is that we put our armor on, because we're feeling unsafe for myriad of reasons. We put our armor up, which immediately excludes any kind of vulnerability. And compassion and self-compassion actually requires a level of vulnerability that in times like this, when we're already feeling unsafe, we don't want to practice.
Absolutely. You know? And with that vulnerability, that can feel a bit scary. With that vulnerability, there comes courage you know, you need to have the courage to be vulnerable with people, and that's not easy, and it's not learnt, and it's not learnt easy, but certainly not learnt quickly in times of stress and anxiety. So the wellness tools that we have talked about to date, and the things we've talked around daily maintenance and getting through the day, around breathing, stopping, taking a minute, all of those ways that we care for ourselves in the moments of stress can help us to be more compassionate to ourselves and compassionate then with other people. And the more that you can practice that, the better that you will feel about the relationships that you have with other people, and how you are on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
And how you are getting through.
And being real, which is being vulnerable and admitting to emotions and things going on, and that we're not perfect and we mess up, and life isn't actually, you know, quite how we sometimes like it to look on social media. That's really actually powerful for real, authentic, deep connections with other human beings. And that really is the core when we look at trauma-informed cultures, services and things. It's that heart, that connection with other people that in fact acts as a prevention moving forward. And when we check in with you for our next video, we're going to talk more about that.